one of the things that I think is true in the military, and it is absolutely true outside of the military, no matter where you are at in an organization, whether you're running the whole organization or whether you're entry level, not a manager, you are a subject matter expert in what you do. You know more about what you do than anyone else in the company.
Hey, everybody, it's Jason McLaren. This is a Leadership Loading podcast.
Hi, I'm Chris Freeman, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer with Guardant Health.
All right. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, let's start off with your background. I know you served in the military, and now you're doing that. You're over there at Guardant. So tell us what led you to join the military.
Yeah, so I joined the military. I actually went to military college. Everyone in my family had served. I had World War II veterans. My father was during Vietnam in the Army, and so that was something that I was always interested in. I was actually, I think, attracted to the discipline. So I went to college at a military school, and then subsequently served in Fort Hood, Fort Riley, and a few pit stops at Fort Knox.
And so you're in, I'm guessing, the Army since you're at all those forts?
Yes, I was in the Army and I was in the armor branch.
Okay, good deal. All right. And how long did you serve?
After college, I was in just under 6 years. So I got out as a captain.
And what did you go to college for? Like, what was your major?
So I went to the military academy and I dual majored in chemistry and life sciences. It was kind of the closest you could get to a pre-med track. And then everyone has to do a minor in engineering. And this is going to sound a lot better than my performance, but I actually did nuclear engineering as a track. And that's just because it canceled the most chemistry classes.
That's a good little hack there that you did. To get around some of that. So
I will say that I have not used any of that nuclear engineering academia in the military or in business sector.
All right. So you did your military time. What led you to, when you got out, what led you to the healthcare sector? I guess your undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been interested in medicine. I actually spent a summer at Walter Reed when I was at the academy, which I really enjoyed that experience. And so I knew I wanted to stay close to healthcare and try to work with people. I had an opportunity when I first got out to work at a company called Genentech, which is known mostly for kind of cancer. And I've spent the last 20 plus years in the healthcare space. And then about 3 years ago, I joined Guardant, which is a oncology diagnostics company. So we have a lot of tests that help people figure out what's the best treatment to go on if they're sick. And then more recently, we just had a test launch that actually screens for cancer. So, Jason, you folks my age need to start thinking about CRC screening. The current options aren't necessarily pleasant. And so Guardant just got FDA approval for a blood test so that you can screen for cancer now, at least for colorectal cancer.
That's awesome. And when you left the military, was Guardant your first position out of the military?
No, I joined, I was from California, and so I came back to the Bay Area. That's where a lot of biotechnology companies are. I joined a company, Genentech. I was there about 8 or 9 years, and then I went just up the street to a company called Gilead, which is another biotech company, and then I was there a little over a decade, and then finally made it over to Guardant Health during the shutdown in the pandemic.
That makes sense. So, in your military career, what kind of things helped you adapt to, getting into the healthcare and biotech?
I think the military, it's funny. I talk to people all the time. I had a lot of companies have employee resource groups. And so at the last few companies I've been at, including at Guardant, I chair the Veterans Committee where we bring all the veterans together, which is a lot of fun. And we actually, not just me, a lot of us talk about how much the military has actually shaped how we view the world, how we operate in organizations. I think two things for me stand out. One is just a bias to action. I think people are used to, if you have 80% of the information, go and we'll figure it out. And I think that bias to action serves you well in the military. It also, I think, is a nice attitude or predisposition to have in business. And then the second is lifelong learning. One of the wonderful things about at least my experience in the Army was that kind of up or out attitude. You were constantly growing and learning. And I remember people would say, if you're comfortable in a job in the military, you've been in it too long. It's time to move up or move over. And, I take that same approach, or I've tried to take that same approach since I've been out. And the other thing I think the military does very, very well is when you do move to a new role or to a higher level, there's there's a lot of training that the Army does. You get more training in the military than, I mean, 10 times what you get on the civilian side as you move through your career. And so I've tried to augment every time I've made major career moves. I've gone back to school. I mean, I'm in school right now, 50 years. I'm still studying and learning and trying to do what the military did, which is combine that on the job experience and that great training with tangible academic or proper education on different topics. And I like that balance. And it was something that again was introduced to me in the Army, and I've tried to carry forward into my civilian career.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the civilian. In the military, you may move bases every 2 years, and of course, you get promoted up and move to a different position. And sometimes in the civilian sector, once you move into the civilian sector, you may be there a while. So I think some military people, they end up job hopping a lot or moving on to new things, and so yeah, that's definitely a good thing to be aware of when you're looking at a civilian career.
Well, and again, when I got into, out of the military, when I was at Fort Riley, I took advantage of military programs and went to school, and the Army supported that. And so, anyone who's still in the military, I would highly encourage you to look at the resources that the Army provides to continue your education, no matter what level you're at. Mine was actually for a master's degree in administration. And then I've been lucky, and I think this is often the case, certainly at a number of companies, that they will continue to help support your education either entirely or they'll help subsidize it. And I think a lot of companies have resources that people just don't know about, or they know about and they don't want to commit the time. So I've spent a lot of nights, I still am, a lot of weekends going to school, but it for me has, I think, really made me a more balanced person. And then, as you mentioned,
Definitely. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the Dream Foundation. Is that the right name? Yeah. And what you
yeah,
guys are doing over
so the
there?
Dream Foundation, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Jason. So I worked with the Dream Foundation now for past 3 or so years. So the Dream Foundation fulfills end of life dreams um, for people who don't have the means. So it's a lot of people would say it's akin to Make a Wish, but for adults. And so they wanted to work with me in part because of my military background, and they have a big part of the organization, Dreams for Veterans, where we go and, like I said, support veterans who at the end of their life are facing the end of their life, and you ask them, what's your dream, what would you like to do? More often than not, it's they want to go help somebody else. They want access to a uniform so they can have a proper services and be in the uniform from their respective service time. It's incredibly humbling. I think for those of us who've served, that fits into the ethos, so it's probably not surprising, but it's something that I can be a part of and try to help folks in their time of need. And that's really where personally I think there's a number of wonderful organizations and nonprofits that try to support the military community and do amazing things. But the one big gap to me was folks that are 40 years removed, 30, 40 years. And sometimes I think it's kind of out of sight, out of mind with the military resources. And so Dream Foundation tries to help out.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good resource, and like you said, there is that little gap there from once they turn 18, and there's not really any organizations out there to help people that are facing the end of life. So we'll put the links for that in the show notes below, so people can connect if they want to.
Yeah, wonderful. And again, it's if you have anyone that you think is in that situation, please direct them our way. We would love to help.
All right, Chris, wrapping up, what would be your one leadership tip for a new leader? Say they're stepping in their first leadership role. What would it be?
So I think this is a great question. And one of the things that I think is true in the military, and it is absolutely true outside of the military, no matter where you are at in an organization, whether you're running the whole organization or whether you're entry level, not a manager, you are a subject matter expert in what you do. You know more about what you do than anyone else in the company. And so I think sometimes people are a little bit nervous to speak up or, feel like they haven't earned a seat at the table. I would shatter that misperception for anyone who has it. I can tell you, as someone who's now a leader in an organization, I want to hear from everyone for us to be our best. And this is certainly the same thing in the military. The folks making decisions in the back, they cannot do that if they don't know all the details that are happening across the front. And so I think the same thing in any organization you're in, whether it's education, private sector, healthcare. I need to know what's happening with my team, and I can't get that information if people don't speak up. So, and the other thing I would say, the what's in it for you, the people who speak up, the people who are natural leaders at every level, and there are leaders at every level. Those are the people who, Jason, to your comment about getting unstuck, those are the people who I see get unstuck and have opportunities and move throughout organizations. So just be confident in what you are an expert in.
Definitely. I think the special forces community calls that decentralized leadership. Everybody's a leader and speaking up when you see something so that the official leadership can take control of that. So that's definitely a good point.
And I would say for leaders, it's the reciprocal. Empower your teams. They know more than you do. Give your teams rope. Let them make decisions in real time, decisions on the ground. And far more often than not, you're going to end up at a much better place, much faster and more efficient than if you centralize everything. So yeah, Jason, I think that goes both ways.
So Chris, we'll put the show notes, the links to Guardant and the Dream Foundation in the show notes below, and people can get a hold of you guys. Anything else they need to know before we wrap up?
No, Jason, again, thanks for having me. And again, thanks for everyone who's listening to this. I think it's a small contribution to lifelong learning. That would be my biggest thing to leave you with. But like I said, I'm getting pretty old now, got the gray hairs, but still trying to learn and grow every single day. And that's something that I really attribute to the attitude and the culture that's established from my military time. But I think this is a great forum to share experiences. So again, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. This episode of Leadership Alone Podcast is brought to you by Go Heroes Inc. www.goheroes.org. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, just go to that link there, scroll to our podcast page, or just email us at contact@goheroes.org, and we'll get you connected to the right people.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership Inspired.